Welcome to our members-only video series, where we interview a number of clients about the impact of shared ownership in their businesses. Come along to hear from owners and cooperators about their challenges and experiences. Well, Claire and Kate, so good to be with you. Thanks for joining me for our interview series for International Year of the Cooperative. You all hold a special place in my heart after spending a number of years in Ithaca. I'd love to hear the origin story. How did Gimme Coffee start? Why root it in Ithaca, New York? And maybe take us from there up to the decision to become a worker cooperative.
Sure. So Gimme Coffee is 25 years old now. We just had our 25th anniversary.
Congratulations, that's a big
Yeah,
milestone.
it is a big milestone. It's your silver anniversary. And it was founded by some folks who started a coffee shop in 2000, intending to just have like a neighborhood coffee shop vibe, expanded, started roasting their own coffee. And then as we expanded, we had cafes in multiple locations. Eventually, the owner and founder decided to retire in 2019. And a lot of coffee shops of our size and scale, when the owner retires, they get sold to one of like four major coffee conglomerates. And he wasn't interested in that. And he really wanted to keep the coffee shop local and to still be part of Ithaca and the sort of Ithaca, New York vibe. And so he explored selling to the employees instead.
I can't believe it's been 25 years. That actually takes me back to when I was in Ithaca. I would have been a junior. So I can't believe we're all celebrating silver together. That's awesome. Uh, what inspired the workers when it came to the worker ownership conversion? We heard a little bit about the selling owner. Maybe when did that all come together? And what was that early conversation like when the owner took it to the workers?
I can start a little bit about this about feasibility. So the we started doing a feasibility study to tell if the company could buy the company from the company um, in February, March 2020. So it was great timing to explore feasibility. So it definitely added some time and complexity. And then I was involved with Kevin, who's the selling owner, when we were working on that feasibility study. And it came out as, yes, this is possible. You've got the employee culture for it. And so we were able to take it to the employees. Later in 2020, we were still reopening cafes at that point. We weren't fully staffed, but we were still really excited to take it to employees. And I think Kate might be able to speak to like what that was like at that moment in.
Yeah, I mean, from what I remember, because that was a strange time with a lot of things happening, but I think it was originally met by the employees with confusion and not really knowing like what 100% what a co-op was. Like a lot of people understood like when they went to a cooperative grocery store, like what that kind of thing is, but a co-op of the employees owning the company, it definitely wasn't as familiar to me. And I think a lot of people were confused how that worked. Like first impressions being like, I can't buy a company. Like, how are we going to raise all this money? Because you didn't understand that like the business was going to take a loan. So there was definitely a lot of education at the beginning, having people explain to the employees like how it works and the benefits. And surprisingly, people came around, I think, pretty quick once they understood it more.
So you touched on one surprise. What were parts of the process that were challenging or any other surprises?
My number one challenge is, I think it's the explaining the difference between operations and governance
Hmm.
is our biggest, I would say is still our biggest hurdle. Uh, like realizing that just because we're an employee-owned business, that doesn't make, like, we still have a management structure who is in charge of operations, and then we have the board of directors that are in charge of the big picture things. So as a board member, like we have gotten a lot of like emails about like uh staffing or HR complaint, and it's like that's not what we're doing. So that's a daily thing that we're all trying to find the best way to understand and explain.
How have you seen that learning translate for workers? Have you seen moments of workers kind of getting it, or has there been any new kind of insight that comes from that tension? I think that's a perennial issue for so many worker co-ops. It's like, what do you mean? Like, I'm just going to go to somebody and tell them what I think. And I find there's often some new learning that comes from exploring that these structures are used for different purposes, management versus board.
I
Yeah.
think we've had some real success from our membership committee, which is relatively new. It wasn't in place when we transitioned. And we put it together in part, I say we, but the board put it together in part to uh, talk to new members, people who are going to be applying, and handle their questions and so on. And we initially in our bylaws, we have a little quiz to become a member. Basically,
Love that.
do you understand what a cooperative is? We do a little orientation, and then there's and it was not supposed to be difficult, but we discovered it was too difficult. The format of it was difficult, um, and people were, really flustered by it. And the membership committee now instead is doing these effectively one-on-one.
Mhm.
And then instead of the quiz being like, here's a form you fill out, which feels really official, they have a conversation about it, and it lets them go back and forth. So if somebody doesn't understand the operations versus governance, they can just keep talking about it until, they can sort of come up with an example to answer the question. And I think it's been really successful and really helpful, especially compared to our sort of earlier, here's a summary of the bylaws. Now do you understand?
Definitely overwhelming.
Yeah.
I love that. That feels very much like getting feedback and getting constantly the signals of, okay, is this landing? Is this not landing? You can see patterns or people asking the same questions. I think that's great. I love the innovation. That's the thing that it really inspires me by these conversations is, when we sometimes leave the picture, we don't really know how things are going, but I get to hear some of these stories of you figure out the way to make it land and resonate. And that to me is those are the pillars of culture. Those are things you all came up with under your legal structure to have this resonate and build norms and agreements around. I think that's so cool. And I love hearing that. So on being a cooperative, now that you have, 5 years or so under your belt, what would you say are some of the biggest differences in how the business operates relative to before it was a cooperative or relative to how a traditional business would operate? Like stuff on the ground, not just the legal changes.
Well, having a board of directors is a big change, obviously. And um, yeah, having a strategic plan, which we didn't have before, which became, we also didn't have a budget before. So both of those things came from having to have a board that approves those things. So management still runs the day-to-day operations, but we do have like the decision matrix where we can look and see who is in charge of which responsibility. And yeah, having committees like the membership committee is different, and it's nice having like yeah, workers more involved in these decisions, like recruiting new members, or we have a rally committee now which does our we do fundraising through some of our coffees. So there's a committee of employees now that helps decide like who we are donating to and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think Gimme was trying to be a progressive workplace prior to the transition. It's part of why the transition was appealing to the people who worked here. Um, but being a cooperative focuses your attention on employees and on the workplace in a way that I think is really helpful and really grounding. Soon after we transitioned, one of the first things the board worked on was doing a major revision to our mission, vision, and values. And part of that was to reframe it from being entirely about coffee to being about people who work here. So we make good coffee. We're proud of making good coffee. We make good scones. We're proud of making good scones, but we're also proud of being a great place to work. And our mission and our vision are at least partly about um, how we can be a place that cultivates economic prosperity, how we can have meaningful work, and how we can keep the coffee system both locally in our cafes and with our producers, and how we can help that coffee system thrive. And I think it really focuses us. Every year we talk about benefits. We started offering new things. They're saying, what if we're a food service job that offers a 401k, and things like that, which really come from that focus and that attention to the workplace and the experience of working here.
That's refreshing to hear that so quickly you have refocused and reframed the business mission around your key stakeholders, your workers. That immediately strikes me as different from the traditional model. Is there a particular story or anecdote that comes to mind when you think of this reframing? Was there either a customer experience or worker experience that's an example of how that reframe just kind of comes to life?
I think some of it has come to life in how we've been talking about our work in our cafes, which is our most customer service facing work. We have other folks who answer the phone, but our cafe employees are baristas, and store managers are the people who see the public most frequently. And we've always had policies about safety and communication. And we've discovered that, broadly speaking, people didn't believe us about them. So we said any worker can eject anyone from the business for any reason. And that's really important for us. Like, we'll review it later. We'll decide if it's a permanent ban. But if you're there working by yourself, you can make them leave. But we discovered that people were coming to us from a kind of food service job where that was definitely not true. They didn't believe us. They didn't believe that we would have their back in that conversation. And so we've been doing a lot of work about that that's involved sort of showing up for folks when they do have to make that decision, which is a terrible decision to have to make. But also the board and executive directors have worked together to do things like de-escalation training, which was a direct request from our cafe staff who were saying, here's something that could happen to make my workplace better and safer, and my work here go more smoothly.
That's powerful. It seems true that the shift to a cooperative and the reframing about what the business is there to do has helped to create or reinvigorate a culture of safety and belonging for the key people about whom this business is organized, the workers. That to me seems transformative. And in these interviews, I'm trying to bring to life the reality that the cooperative structure is not the end all be all. It's about what it does to enrich and enhance the lives of its members, in this case, the worker. I come from a labor background, and so to me, the cooperative's always been a means to an end. And I just love hearing how there's so much knowledge and wisdom in the experience of the worker. And when you can kind of unlock that and then create systems and structure around it, you begin to transform culture. And I'm now curious to know, how has that resonated and rippled in Ithaca to your customer base or to the community? Have you seen any changes? Has this kind of rippled beyond your workers?
Not as much as we'd like. Maybe we've had trouble talking about it. Uh, we talk about it as workplace standards. We've tried to do things where we change how we advertise jobs to try to emphasize the cooperative. Like this is a cooperative. This is a long-term opportunity. If you want it to be, you can grow in the company. We offer ongoing education, all of those things. But we still have trouble, at least a little, because Ithaca has a really high population of students who are constantly coming in to town. So every year there are new people that we're trying to, you know, um, convey this message to. We have talked with some other business owners in the area who do other think about their food service work in other ways. They're maybe not cooperatives, but we have alignment around, mission or values. And so we've had some good conversations with folks locally. Um, and we've also had some really good conversations with folks nationally. I think the board has received inquiries, and I've received inquiries as well from coffee coffee shop owners who are interested in um, becoming cooperatives in the future, and it's really great to be able to talk to other people about how they could do that too. You're talking to some coffee shop 3,000 miles away,
Yeah,
but they really want to make the change.
that's awesome. Well, hopefully the ILR school takes notice. They did not, in my time, talk much about worker ownership. They were so focused on, at the time, very different kind of ideologies, economic ideologies. And so hopefully things have evolved to now include cooperatives and what it can mean for workers. So hopefully there's an opportunity there.
Yeah.
Shifting gears a little bit to,
May I
go
just
ahead,
interrupt you? Um,
please.
so actually, that's a good reminder that the ILR school now does a class on cooperatives.
Yay.
And we were one of their example case studies. And then also we participated in the class where the students worked on a project for us about communication and how communication happens between our various locations, because sometimes we feel kind of siloed by both time and space
Yeah.
in our different locations. And that was pretty great. There was some, pretty big co-ops there, and we're like, we're the little local, but
Yeah. Well, that just seemed, I mean, that's the synergy of, maybe having a hyper local focus, but being plugged into an institution that has global reach. It's the slow ripple effects. And I'm curious to hear your reflections on this. So much of the work that we do in relation to cooperatives is about laying the groundwork and, kind of being stone workers to slowly add to the cathedral of an alternative economy. How do you talk about that in the organization? That can sometimes be a little heady and lofty for people who are, you know, looking just to clock in and do the work and clock out. But is there kind of that connection to what you're all building as part of a bigger picture?
I think there is some conversation. We talk about the sixth cooperative principle
Mhm.
a bunch, especially in our sort of um, sales and community oriented departments. So we do a lot of coffee donation to not-for-profits and organizations working in the community. That's about community building here. But we also talk a lot about other cooperatives, whether they're worker owned or consumer owned co-ops, and how we can work together as part of that cooperative economy.
I love that. What, shifting gears a little bit, again, if you remember back to 2019, 2020, thinking about the process, we worked together. What was it like working with our firm? What was it like in terms of working with a lawyer, for the steering committee that may have been the first time? What are some things you wish you knew then that you may know now? And was there anything about cooperative values that came out in the work? That's kind of a loaded set of questions, but maybe reflect on the experience that we had, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and help others who may be kind of on this journey toward the beginning. What do you wish you knew then that you know now?
I was on the transition team, but I don't remember like at the beginning, like I wasn't that involved in like working with y'all. But as president since then, it's been incredibly helpful to just ask questions to make sure we're doing things legally. Um, Things that it's just in this process, so many like you write all your bylaws and plan your decision matrix and you think you've thought of all the things, and that's never the case. Everything like we've already done bylaw amendments and a few already. Our first vote for board seats was like a mess, and we had to do a revote. So just having, I don't know how you would do this without having um, a lawyer that you feel comfortable who is a lot with and is aligned with your values, because they're gonna need to ask a million questions. So having someone like you on speed dial is that's the only way you could do it.
Yeah. I really appreciated uh, the experience of working with you in that transition. And we had such a long transition because in part of the pandemic and its effects. And I think one of the things that I would have done differently if I knew then what I know now is that I would have started talking to legal much earlier in the process. So we had a workbook that said, what are the decisions you have to make to become a co-op? And we went through as a transition team and we answered all the questions. And we had a lot of great productive conversations as a transition team about what should the buy-in be? Here's what other co-ops do. How can you decide who could be a co-op? And then when we got to the point where we shared that with you, there were some things where your experience working with multiple co-ops would say, oh, actually, there's an issue. If you do this, here's a problem. There's a reason people do it a different way. I remember one thing that we wanted to do that I think was not legal in the state of New York, where we initially had our ownership structure set up to differentiate between full-time and part-time employees at the time. And so we had to transition how we were thinking about when you could buy in into being total hours worked instead of saying whether you're full-time or part-time. And so things like that, where I think if we'd started involving legal earlier, it would have been really helpful in those original conversations where sometimes we spent 45 minutes talking about, some item in the workbook, and then it turns out that there's a reason people do it one way.
Yeah.
And we presented a few things to employees that then later we had to say, actually, that's not what we're going to do. This is what we're thinking right now is fortunately how we framed that. So it wasn't a huge deal to then go back to people and say, we've changed our mind. But I think we could have made that smoother for everyone and had less confusion and back and forth. We'd had that information. And I think having the experience with you that made it clear that you shared our values and that you had the cooperative economy at heart is not just I'm protecting you from legal liability, but I have this experience and these examples, and this is breadth of knowledge of how co-ops operate everywhere in the country and how people do this generally, and concerns that people have or things that come up, I think is super helpful, in that process.
Well, that was very kind. Thank you for sharing all of that. My final question is, in thinking about maybe all that's going on in the broader context, 2025 has been named the UN's International Year of the Cooperative. What does that mean to you? What does that mean to Gimme Coffee? Without speaking for the workers, what do you think it means for them? I mean, what do you feel like you're a part of as we kind of recognize and celebrate this year?
I think that part of it is maybe feeling like uh the original or the business model that we're all used to doesn't could be better, and we can kind of reframe how we're doing things in business, where as we look at all these, like the inequality of wealth in the country. So trying to change the economy for the better by involving more little people, I guess.
I think the part of the International Year of Co-ops or is is about understanding that the current economic system we're in is terrible, um, and that cooperatives are one of the things that can make it somewhat better for at least some people, and that we can work on together to build systems that can work for our employees, but also for our community, that we can be part of our community, um, and and involved in that way. And I think sometimes I often get, because of my position, I often get these surveys that are from like chambers of commerce that say, situations are terrible for businesses. What would make you move? Are you going to leave New York State? And it's like, well, obviously we're not, because this business isn't an operation. This business is a group of people, and
Yes.
the group of people live here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think just thinking about it as rooted in that way in the community and in the employees is really helpful.
I love that. Couldn't have ended on a more poignant note than that. I just want to thank you both for taking the time to help celebrate the International Year of the Cooperative. In times like these, we need all the solutions we could get. We need all the good news we could get, all the bright spots. And I just want to turn the lens right back and say, y'all are doing highly impactful work from the outside, beyond the dozens of owners and hundreds of customers a day. It's having an effect more broadly. These stories matter, these experiences matter. And I'm a firm believer that the ripple effect is the beginning of the tide changing. And truly, I think the base layers of a cathedral are being laid here. And it's because of the day-to-day work that you and your fellow worker owners are doing. It's not always glamorous, but you're doing it differently and you're hanging in there. And that's truly what matters. So thanks for everything that you're doing and thanks for spending the time with me.
Thank you so much. It was great to talk.
Yeah.
That's